Finish line. Welcome into the finish line. I'm Mike Melby. That is Rebecca Pearson. Harrison Arns behind the board tonight. How was you guys this weekend?
Awesome. Except I could have liked a little more sunshine, please. But
that would have been nice.
Yeah,
that would have been nice. Lots of stuff going on in the racing world. NASCAR finished up today. Kyle Larson got his first ever win at Darlington. William Byron wins the Cup Series today. No fights in NASCAR this week, though.
Darn.
Ross Chastain threw a punch last week. He's one of the most disliked guys out running with NASCAR, and it's I don't know. It always adds a little bit of spice when you get.
You got to have one every season. Yes, yeah. It just isn't right. It's not NASCAR without that. You know what I mean?
Well, I thought the rule was you had to have at least one a season that involved a bush.
One of these days, they need to have more kids so that they can keep that line going.
Yeah, well, now Kyle's son is a pretty salty little mini sprint driver.
Mm-hmm.
I think you may see him.
We may see him
later
coming up
on
the
in
ranks.
life. Yeah, he's one of Kyle Larson's son as well. Is doing some damage. So
awesome. We're gonna keep those
interesting
rivalries going.
We got a cool show today. We're going to run through the victory lane here in a minute and let you know who all the winners were from some local races, national races. But we're also going to talk Sports Car Club of America. We mentioned that we want to cover all kinds of motorsports. And one of the coolest things that happens in Lincoln, Nebraska, that I know enough people don't know about, is the SCCA and what they do out at Lincoln Air Park. Steve is going to join us. Do you know how to pronounce his last name?
Well, I think it's Ducharme, probably, but we'll clarify with him when he gets here.
But Steve's going to join us. He's going to tell us a little bit about everything with the SCCA. We got a bunch of great questions I know that we'll ask him, and 10 more will probably pop up off of his answers. So looking forward to it. Going to be a fantastic show. And also, I want to talk a little bit about some stuff that's going on in dirt track racing along the lines of signal sticks. Because in the late model race, the Lucas Oil dirt late models on Wednesday night or whatever earlier this week, signal sticks kind of ruined what is going to be a good race. Kyle Larson went off about it, and I found it interesting that Kyle Larson's complaining that guys are getting signal sticks when he's openly admitted that he won both of his chili bowls using a spotter that had the signal sticks. And oh, by the way, he races in NASCAR where they have a spotter.
Well, if it works for you, you like it. And if it doesn't work for you, you don't like it.
Well, he wasn't on the track in this one. It was one where he was just simply watching, and he's like, oh, Brandon Sheppard's coming. Oh, no, not fair. So we'll talk about that as well. But right now I want to jump into Victory Lane, and we'll get you caught up on all the winners from this week in just a whole bunch of different forms of racing. NASCAR truck race on Friday at Darlington. Christian Eckes takes home the win. It ended under caution in the Xfinity Series yesterday at Darlington. Kyle Larson wins. First ever win for him. He passes John Hunter Nemechek on the last lap. Hunter Nemechek winds up spinning out, finishes fifth ultimately, just as they were coming out of turn 4, going down the straightaway for the checker. And they interviewed, speaking of fights, they interview Hunter Nemechek afterwards, John Hunter Nemechek, and he goes, that was just great racing. That's hard racing. That's the way you're supposed to race, and because there was some bumping and whatever, but it ended with one guy in victory lane and the other guy not. But he wasn't mad about it because he's like, hey, this was racing. One of those. So William Byron picks up the win in Cup today. High Limit Series is back in action this Tuesday night at Wayne County Speedway in Wayne City, Illinois. It is Sheldon Hodenshields High Limit Buckeye Brawl, $32,000 to the winner of that one. All-Star Circuit of Champions, they were in Jacksonville Speedway in Jacksonville, Illinois on Friday. Hunter Schoenberg picked up the win. In Wilmot at Wilmot Raceway up in Wisconsin on Saturday, Tyler Courtney won by over 6 seconds. World of Outlaw Sprints, Wednesday at Lincoln Speedway against the Posse. The Posse comes home with a win. Anthony Macri sails it around the top of 3 and 4, passes Brent Marks on the final corner of the last lap. Macri takes home the win, and Marks ran second. I believe Brad Sweet came in third, so he was the best World of Outlaw finisher. Sweet, though, returns the favor for the Outlaw guys. He wins on Saturday at Williams Grove. Last night was rained out. Sweet extended his point lead to 36 over David Gravel, 46 over Carson Macedo. As I mentioned, Lucas Oil late models. The race that they were talking about winds up with Hudson O'Neal picking up the victory, and Brandon Sheppard just couldn't quite get there in time. And then last night at Fairbury Speedway, Bobby Pierce takes home the win. Knoxville was rained out. USAC is dark. However, they did race here locally down in Beatrice on Friday night. The modifieds, Anthony Ross comes from 6th to pick up the win. In the sport mods, Rick Rohr comes from 9th. Jordan Grabowski from 9th in the stock car class down in Beatrice. Hobby stocks saw Taylor Huss win from 9th. And then Zach Blurton won the 305 sprints. They ran the Race Saver sprints down at Beatrice on Friday. Joey Danley had issues in his heat race. He comes from 19th and runs 4th. So a big night for Joey Danley down in Beatrice. And then last night at Eagle, Adam Golian wins the sprint feature. In the modifieds, it was Bob Zobak. Matt Andrews wins the sport mods. Stock car was won by Kyle Vanover, and Adam Wasserman winds up with the hobby stock A feature victory last night. And then real quickly, Malvern Banks 360 Sprint Car Series last night was at Off-Road Speedway up in Norfolk, and Tim Estenson takes home the win. They'll next be in action on the 28th of this month at Shelby County Speedway in Harlan, Iowa. That'll wrap up Victory Lane.
Nice job.
Any particular? Now you finally got to a dirt track out at Eagle.
I did.
One of the few that you've ever been to. And the one thing that you were talking about that I found very interesting, especially when we were watching the heat races, you were trying to really pay attention to the lines that the guys ran.
Absolutely.
And I told you that the cushion would wind up by the wall, and by a feature of the sprint cars, it did. Yeah. They're running a couple of feet off the wall. It is so interesting to me where the tires on pavement tracks will flake off, and you'll get the marbles.
Yep, the marbles.
And the marbles are not a good thing.
No.
But the interesting thing is on a dirt track, the marbles kind of will sail off up into the cushion, which is where you never want to be if you're, above that little ridge on the cushion. Then you're in the marbles. But boy, you could have a top, a middle, and a lower line on dirt track. And that's one that I think may have been a little bit different from what you normally see, especially from pavement.
Oh, definitely. That's for me, you're always looking for the fastest way around the track, right? Now, completely different since I haven't been in a dirt car to understand how do you compete, right? That's what I've been looking at. And then I was watching the race at the Grove, and it looks so smooth, right? It just looks amazing. I thought, wow, that looks like fun. I just want to get out there, I'm just watching it on YouTube and thinking, oh, that looks amazing.
Well, and Williams Grove is one of the most unique tracks, obviously because of the bridge over the backstretch that leads into the infield, but it's Martinsville. It's a horseshoe
or a horseshoe.
It's a paperclip.
Yeah.
And it's super fast.
Yeah.
And there's hardly any banking. Okay. And that's what's so crazy is you've got a track like Eagle that's got 22 degrees of banking in the corners. And then you got a track like Knoxville or Williams Grove that have 5 degrees of banking, and the turns. Knoxville's wider. The track's a little bit wider, and the turns are a lot longer. It's not as much of a paper clip,
right?
But man, Williams Grove is tight.
It was cool though. I was watching all the passing, just to see how much passing. I don't know if some tracks, I assume some tracks you can pass better on some than others, just like, on the asphalt. It's the same kind of a thing, right? Some just lend themselves. You have a longer straight, you can get fast, or, a nicer corner where you can get around. But it was fun to watch the passing. And I was like, oh, I really want to get in a car now. So
yeah, that's
let's hope nobody gives me one.
Yeah. We'll have to make sure we get something like that figured out. It's 1-2 from the standpoint of the way the guys race. And we were talking about sprint cars. I don't know enough about modifieds and stock cars because I never was around them racing. I announced and I called all those classes, and I may have, put a helmet on and jumped in a couple and hot lapped a few of them, but I don't know the setup of the car. I've been on a pit crew. I've built a car from a frame to putting a motor in it to a rear end to the front end and hooking everything up. I know what goes into that. And a sprint car literally has one gear.
Yeah.
And it's whatever you put in the rear end.
Yep.
And at Eagle, the guys are running 612, 620 gear ratio. Pretty high-end stuff. I mean, that's something that's going to rev the motor. You're going to be up into that 8,800 RPM. But it's literally one gear. There's no shifting.
Which I think is appealing, because when you're driving, you want to focus on driving, right? When you have to shift gears, it's a whole nother thing. Of course, it's, part of the strategy to win as well. But, it's to me a little bit like go-karts or something where you've just got your foot flat out and what you're focusing on is driving and trying to win. So I don't know that I have one preferred versus another, but it's just more to think about.
Well, and it's interesting on the setup of the sprint car, you're going to wind up, if you want to run low, you're going to have a higher gear ratio. If you want to run high, you're going to have a lower gear ratio because you want to be able to carry the speed.
Yep.
Now you're going further, but you're going faster.
Yep.
Unless you're on the bottom and you're going slower, but you're not going slower because you're going faster because you can accelerate better.
Exactly.
And it was funny as we were watching the racing a week ago out at Eagle, the bottom of 2, a lot of nights, not all nights, but a lot of nights, the bottom of 2 is always gold.
Yeah.
for some reason, there's always moisture there. Just like there's always a hole in turn one, there's always moisture at the bottom of 1 and 2, it seems like. And we saw a good night of racing. By the time the A feature came around, it was mainly a bottom dominant track. Although Trevor Grossenbacher, he just said, you know what, I'm sailing around the top. He did, and worked his way up to third. Couldn't quite catch the winners that night, but it's so interesting the way you have to pick the lanes. And it's all based on how you set your car up if you're going to run a sprint.
And do they only get like a parade lap, first lap around to see the condition of the track, or do they have people going out to check out the track to tell them, if it's gold in the bottom or
a lot of it is just going to be during intermission. You'll see a ton of racers that'll go down.
They walk it.
They'll walk it.
Yep.
Some of them will go down and ride a quad or the little mini motorcycles, and they're going around and they're literally looking for.
That's what I'm used to doing.
Yeah, you're looking to see where is the moisture at.
Yep.
With all the number of laps that a lot of these guys that have been racing locally have around Eagle Raceway, they also know the track looks like this right now at intermission. And I know last year in July, the temperature was about the same, et cetera. You know what I mean? That's all filed away in the memory bank. Being an analytics guy and a numbers guy, I'm one that'll I want to take stats. And part of the stats that I take are weather related.
Sure.
I want to know what the conditions were when the track was the way it was, and why did we set, what did we set the car up like?
Sure.
And then when we go back through our notebook, we can sit there and go, oh, the last time we used this setup and the track was in these conditions, it was 30 degrees cooler than it is tonight.
Right. It's the same with asphalt too, right? It's a lot about the temperature and then the tires, right? And then you have different tires you're trying, which I assume you're doing the same thing in dirt track, right? Just trying to figure out which ones are sticking better. So yeah, a lot of components going into thinking of the strategy of how to win.
One of the big things that happens both in pavement racing and Cup and Formula One, no matter what, and dirt track and no matter the series, is driver changes. But they happen a lot more often in dirt track, especially sprint cars and high-end sprint cars, World of Outlaws, All-Star Circuit of Champions, even the NARC series out in Northern California. Some big heavy hitters that are out there, but there's driver changes that'll happen. Buddy Kofoid, who is a two-time USAC midget champion, national champion, came to a mutual agreement with CMS Racing, and they parted ways this last week. Now, super, super talented. Picked up a win. He won the inaugural High Limit Series race last year in August. And then he won earlier this year at the Talladega Short Track. Car owner Leighton Crouch didn't waste any time. It was like, something was coming. But Corey Eliason, who's had some success, he's won races with the All-Stars. He's won races with the Outlaws in the past. He's named as the replacement. Kofoid winds up jumping into Dennis and Teresa Roth's 83 Junior. Now, the 83 was in the news with James McFadden because he was doctoring tires a couple of weeks ago. They both wound up skipping what would have been racing at Williams Grove, which would have been the first race that McFadden could have raced after his suspension. Instead, they pull all the way to the West Coast, and Kofoid in the 83 Junior and James McFadden in the 83. And Kofoid finished sixth on Friday and then had a DNF. He started third right alongside McFadden, by the way, in the A feature on Saturday night. Had some problems in it and got a DNF, I think, credited with 24th position. But from the standpoint of driver changes with Formula One, with NASCAR, it is so rare to ever see a mid-season.
Oh, mid-season, definitely. Yeah. No.
Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, it happens. Obviously, with injuries, it happens, frequently. But no, for a change in direction, which I think is what was referred to in this one.
Pretty much.
Yeah, not normally in the middle of a season. There's just too much invested. Of course, you're talking Formula One, NASCAR, right? Big time money that's been invested in contracts that people have signed. You've done a lot to set up and work with them. I'm trying to think if I can remember one where we changed mid-season, but nothing comes to mind.
That's what I mean. That's what's so unusual. I think back a couple of years ago, and there's some brothers, the McFadden brothers, Madsen brothers. There's Ian Madsen, and he was driving the 18 car with the World of Outlaws, and he was having some success. His brother Kerry has been in and out of rides all through World of Outlaws, and he's raced locally with Knoxville for a few years, whatever. They're from Australia. But Ian is doing an okay job, and I think he even picked up a win in the 18 car with World of Outlaws 2 years ago. And midweek on a Wednesday, all of a sudden, he's out of a ride, and they named this 19-year-old, I think at the time, Gio Scelzi. And myself and some others that follow the sport were just like, okay, well, that was stupid.
Right? Like, what do you think?
Here's this young kid that's out of California, and granted, he's had a little bit of success, but really? You're going to dump Ian Madsen for him? lo and behold, we're here about 2 years later, and Gio Scelzi, by the way, won the $50,000 to win high limit race down at Lakeside earlier this year, and has picked up 5 or 6 World of Outlaw wins.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He's super consistent too.
I don't know enough about this series, but I guess there's something when you're running a business, which all these race teams are, right? You're just running a business that if you know it's not working, right? It's a hire slow and fire fast kind of a thing. So, if it's not working and you can get out of it, there's some truth to that, perhaps, and so maybe in these smaller series relative to the big ones I'm thinking about, right, that it's more flexible to do that. So, good on you if you're making a decision like that and you're able to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I want to talk to some of the local guys, because there are car owners and drivers that are here that race locally. And one of them, and I talked to him, he's going to come on. He's not, because I think he's up at Huset's racing their weekly show, their weekly Sunday night show up in Sioux Falls. But Stewie Snyder, great young man, talented racer, and he is going to jump on. And that's one of those questions I want to ask him, because I know that he's driven 4 people and he's got his own car, and what the dichotomy is like. And I was able to help a good friend of mine out. We had him on last week, Ty Jensen, when he raced for Ivan Tracy. And it was such a different field than when I was helping out Regan Kitchen, who at the time owned his own car. And because how the decisions get made on what happens with the car, it's different when you've got a car owner that's kind of the crew chief, and you've got a driver that likes his own style. And,
right. Well, you asked me last week about NASCAR when I was sitting in the pit box, whether the driver and the crew chief, don't agree on fuel or tires or something like that, and at that point they're very dependent on their crew chiefs. But when you think about someone saying, hey, the team's going in a different direction, you're thinking about, well, what is that? Are they not giving me enough marketing and airplay? Because sometimes that these personalities want a lot of publicity, or is it they wouldn't set up the car they wanted to, or wouldn't invest, or wouldn't let them run in the races they wanted to? I don't know what those kinds of debates are in these cases, but there's a lot to go on, and there has to be synergy between the owners and the drivers. Otherwise it doesn't work.
It absolutely has got to be synergy between the owners and drivers and the crew chief. And it's insane. One of the fun things about watching NASCAR, and if you get the opportunity to ever go down to Kansas Speedway, being able to go to the little fan zone that kind of gets you close to the pits to be able to see everything that goes on. It is absolutely insane to see literally, you've got right now 36 teams, used to be 43, but 36 teams that are out there right now. And they just do everything in unison. I mean, the Rockettes are jealous of NASCAR pit crew teams, and Formula One pit crew teams, because they're so good.
So much training, and so much like the workout room. When I was at Stewart-Haas, you go into, they have a full gym at Stewart-Haas, and then the guys are lifting weights, and you can see the gym equipment. They have their routine. You see all the things that they're doing to test their car. It's quite a routine, because they can't afford to mess up not 1 second, right? As you know, those pit stops are timed down to the absolute second. So it's something very coveted to be on those crews.
Absolutely. Now, the one thing that I've always wondered is, what kind of a pit crew do the Sports Car Club of America people have? And I just happen to know that the gentleman standing behind you in the production room is going to have the answer to that question, plus a lot more, when we come back here on The Finish Line. We're going to talk some Sports Car Club of America racing right here on 93.7 The Ticket.
If you struggle with joint pain, there's good news. You don't need surgery to get back to full health. South Point Medical and Aesthetics offers breakthrough non-surgical options for treatment of moderate to severe joint pain. Our patients experience little to no downtime from our procedures, and the results are remarkable. They've had 14 years of successful treatments with patients from 35 states because of an effective word-of-mouth traffic. Learn more about how you can get lasting results for joint pain today at southpointmedical.com or call 402-323-8400.
Old School with DP and J.
You could say that, I don't mess with coach. I was asking him, do you want to play pro? 99 out of 100 say yeah.
There you go.
If you think that you're going to go to the NFL and you think every coach you play for is going to be hunky-dory with you, don't even play. Let alone flip it. If you think every coach is going to like you sadly mistaken.
93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids. First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse. Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. In the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
You've driven by GE Landscape Supply countless times, likely without even knowing, at 6701 Cornhusker Highway. Now it's time to stop in. GE Landscape Supply, homeowners and contractors with a vast selection of landscaping and construction materials. They sell in bulk to save you money, and you can buy anything from a 5-gallon bucket to a semi-load. And don't forget, they deliver anywhere. Stop by 6701 Cornhusker Highway from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday and 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturdays. Go to gelandscapesupply.com for more or call 402-467-1627.
The Ticket Water Cooler.
The Chris Kleiman contract, obviously Luke Fickell signed at Wisconsin for cheaper. And I will say this, I think Nebraska overpaid in the open market for Matt Rule. I will also say this, I don't care anymore. If you're Trev Alberts, just get the guy you believe in. If it costs you a few more million a year and it's not really going to do anything to your donors or hurt any support, then
You're already pretty much burning money when you fire a coach and still have to pay them despite them not coaching. So let's throw in a couple more bags of cash
Nebraska
on the fire.
taught me with that Scott Frost move. Oh, don't worry about it. The money's there.
There's nothing quite like the Mercado by Certified Piedmontese Beef. The Mercado offers unique ingredients you can't find anywhere else, open every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The full-service butcher shop and retail store is wonderful for meat lovers with their exclusive Certified Piedmontese Beef and assorted sausages, plus other quality meats, including pork, chicken, and a wide range of the freshest seafood. Plus, every Friday from 11 to 2, the Mercado serves up the best lunch in town on their Friday Feast menu. Stop in at the Mercado today at 84th and Havelock or visit their website at cpmercado.com to see current deals. Start your Sundays off right with Jeff and Nicole Essink on Fitness Fanatics. Jeff and Nicole discuss health and wellness, how to achieve, and more through the life of gym owners and gym goers. It's Fitness Fanatics from 9 to 11 a.m. on Sundays on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Back to the finish line with Mike Melvin on 93.7 theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the finish line. I'm Mike Melby. That is Rebecca Pearson. Big thanks to Harrison Arns for running the board tonight. We are now joined by Steve Ducharme of Sports Car Club of America, the Lincoln chapter of it.
It's Nebraska and
Nebraska
a little bit of
chapter.
Western Iowa.
Okay. I got to ask, I've been really interested in this. I've heard about the event from a couple of different people. I've never been able to make it out to any of the events out there. Been excited to learn more about it. Let's start off with you, though. How did you get your start in racing?
So relatively recently, I had bought a Miata back in the 90s. I really enjoyed it, a lot of fun. I had a first-gen Integra when I lived in Utah and loved carving up the canyons. So I thought it was, a pretty skilled person. And then I learned about the Sports Car Club of America, which has these events called autocross. You get a big parking lot, big paved area, and you set up a course with cones. It's like a shrunk-down race track course. The speeds are kept low, so you don't require a lot of safety equipment. And so I started, and I had a lot of fun, and I was getting beat up all the time because I didn't have the right skills, but I learned a lot. And what was really important for me is in getting started, I didn't need the Miata. You can come in with a family car and with just street driving skills, and you get started. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment. You don't need a lot of modifications to your car. And you'll learn as you go, and it's very accessible. And yet you can take that and you can go to the top of the sport and be national champion with the right skill and improvements in your vehicle.
So have you made it to be a national champion yet, Steve?
I have not. I've done better in a rallycross, which is the same thing on dirt. But I have a lot of fun, and I've won regional championships.
So that's great.
But at the national level, as we're going to talk about later, perhaps, is we have the championships here in Lincoln in September. There are 1,200 plus drivers competing. and a handful of people that watch. It's really about participation, and it's so easy to get started and so easy to have fun.
I think that's one of the great things about SCCA. And if you're just joining us, we're with Steve Ducharme, who's the president. Is that the title or
It's called regional executive, and that's
Regional
because I'm
executive.
elected by the board and not
Okay.
by the membership. The membership elects the board.
Okay, so regional executive for the Nebraska chapter of SCCA and a little bit of Iowa. And one of the things I like about SCCA, and it's also how I got started, was in autocross. But because it's accessible, anybody can literally do it. You can bring your street car out, which is how I started. You can literally bring any car. It doesn't even have to be a sports car, and just start to get the feel of car handling. And that's really, I was dating somebody at the time who introduced me to that. And it's one of the things I like about the show here too, is we're educating people on things they can do, whether it's a fan experience, going to an Eagle Raceway for dirt tracks, or getting behind a car and doing something, especially like autocross, what you can do all by yourself if you would like. So if you don't have friends and family who want to go with you to the track, because you can spend all day at the track, as we know, it's very easy to do, that it's something you can actually do by yourself, or at least get started in doing by yourself. So it might be helpful to explain to folks what autocross is in a little more detail, rallycross, which is going to kind of overlap with our dirt conversation here, and a little bit about what's included in SCCA's scope of racing.
Okay, well, the autocross is, you might say, the most accessible and the most basic. And so picture a 5 to 10 acre parking lot that's open, and you get these orange traffic cones, and you lay out a course where the cones will sort of guide your path. And in fact, in one course, it might only take you 60 to 90 seconds to run the course. You'll make more maneuvers than you will in 20 minutes of track time. So the speeds are kept low enough so that you don't need to have a roll cage, fire equipment, or any of that.
Now, I want to jump in. You've said that a couple of times. The speeds are kept low enough. What speeds are you guys running when you're doing the course?
So some of the faster stock cars are running maximum 65 miles an hour, and which is, you can get that on the highway, except this is on a closed course. You drive against time, one car at a time, so there's virtually no chance of vehicles meeting, and the only safety equipment you really need, besides what's already in your car, like the brakes and seatbelts, is you'll have a helmet. And in fact, we have loaner helmets for those who are new to it, and once they get addicted, which is usually pretty quick, they buy their own.
It is very addictive. I think that's one of the things we used to joke about for people just starting in racing. You start with autocross, and then for me, very quickly got to road course, and then it's road course and autocross together, right? And you're looking for events, and then I'm still doing club events, and then you buy the truck, and then you buy the trailer, and then suddenly you're racing, and now you're doing mods and upgrading your car. There's this whole path that you follow when you start, but again, it can be very accessible to do that. So when you think about the community around here and just getting people to come out and try something and do it for fun, talk a little bit about how SCCA has a pro course and pro events, as well as how do you do something if you're just a regular member of society here in Lincoln and you want to try something out like that versus when you're actually competing on the national level.
That's right. So the first thing you do is find out when we have an event, and our events are going to be about once a month on a weekend.
Okay.
You'll come to the Sunday event. You don't need to get any training beforehand. When you come, we'll check the car to make sure it's in good working order, set you up with a helmet, some coaching, show you how to follow the course, and then you get out there and drive. We'll even put a coach in the car with you. We'll let you ride with someone else. The whole idea is to have you have a fun and safe time. And we even comp the first event for you. So of course we figure you're addicted after that, so it doesn't matter. And so it's relatively laid back, although I stressed out when I started, thinking, I've got to really, show what I can do. When I realized I had nothing to show, it's like,
you're definitely not good your first time out.
I was a lot more comfortable after I realized that I had a long way to go and a lot to learn. And the folks in this area, especially, they're awesome. They're good instructors. We've got many multiple time national champions in our club, instructors and folks have been doing it a very long time. One of our drivers has his car in the Speedway Museum, a 66 Shelby Mustang. He gets it out once in a while to tool around, but he used to compete with that all the time.
Wow. That's a great car too.
I know one of the events you've got coming up, it's the SCCA Lincoln Pro Solo on May 25th, 26th, and 27th. And then the 28th and 29th, it's the Lincoln National Tour. What are those two events?
Correct. They're very similar. They're both based on the course delineated by cones. The Pro Solo, though, adds a tree start. Okay, so you stage, you have the tree, you don't want to jump it and get a red light, but within 60 feet, you're starting to turn. So whereas the what you call the regular autocross, you can actually you can start more gradually. It's a lot easier on the clutch because the timing lights start about 20 or 30 feet ahead. So you can get the car moving without hard launch and then get going. So it's all about the driving skill in both cases. The Pro Solo has some additional features to it. Is what you do is you have parallel mirror courses, and you'll start off with another driver beside you, and you'll make your course, and you'll switch over, and you'll do that a total of 4 runs, and then within your class, and you can see how what your total times are. So it gives a little more head to head. And then when they have the finales of these, then they have dial-ins. So I've been paired up with a Corvette. I'll take off, I'll be halfway through the course, and then there comes the Corvette, boom. but it also means you're there, and based on the car and its performance capability, you're put into a class with cars of capable performance. So it's going to be about the driver and car setup, of course. So that's really important too, to realize you can be a champion with a car that you don't have to spend a lot of money on. A straight off the lot cars or used cars work really great. The main thing you want to improve are the driver and the tires.
Well, you mentioned setup.
Mm-hmm.
What setup changes can you make to a daily driver that would help you run these courses?
So we'll start out with what's called the street or stock class. You're not allowed to do a lot of changes. You can replace the shocks. You can put in a K&N air filter. You can replace the exhaust after the catalytic converter. And the reason for that, it keeps the costs low. You can still make factory level adjustments. So on a Miata, you have good adjustments, and you want the alignment, get a lot actually, negative camber and some toe out and so forth. But you're limited in how much you can do. And in my case, you're also limited in how many things you can screw up and misadjust. Then you go to another level where they allow you to replace the suspension with coilovers and other ways of getting much more control of the suspension. And that route, you can go to higher levels, which means you're going to be competing with other drivers who are better, that are also similarly prepared. You can go to race tire classes. Race tires will be stickier. You can go to mod classes, which allow a lot of modifications in the engine. And you go to classes that are pretty much unlimited. I've had the good fortune in recent years to jump in a car built by a local builders. It's basically a street rod made for this competition, and it's loosely based on a Model T chassis, but it's really a race car with a 383
Nice.
Race engine, and it weighs about the same as my Miata.
Oh my gosh.
And has twice as much tire.
Wow.
So, but that's the kind of thing. You see all these cool cars, some custom built, some straight off the lot.
Steve Ducharme, the regional director of the Sports Car Club of America Nebraska chapter.
And a little bit of Iowa.
Took me a little bit of Iowa. Took me a couple.
I don't want to
times.
forget those guys.
Well, exactly. Now you mentioned that you do a little bit of more rallycross, but some dirt racing as well. Is there where's a track locally that guys can go do that at?
So rallycross track can be found anywhere in Nebraska, basically an open field or a parking lot, and it's designed for this, just like the paved parking lots, because they're a lot around, easy to find, and easy to maintain. And so right now we run out of a lot in Southeast Nebraska City, where we've got other venues we've used. In fact, for many years, we ran out at I-80. Unfortunately, as we know,
yes,
last
more.
September was our last event out there. For many years, we ran on their overflow parking, which is great for this. We had a national championship there in 2014. And then last few years, we've been running hybrid events on the track and in the infield.
Oh, fun.
So a lot of fun. And I really miss the Kozicki's. Were great to us. And I'm sorry they're gone. But as you know, running a track is really difficult.
It's tough
to keep going,
business. Yeah,
right?
Tough business.
Yeah.
Talk to us about rallycross for people who don't know anything about rallycross. What's it like?
So even though the nominal mechanics are different, as I described, the actual driving is quite a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And I started this a few years after the other. I had also just happened to have a Subaru WRX, which is an amazing car, also very inexpensive and very maneuverable. And I got into this in fact, our events were out at I-80, and connected with a fellow from Omaha. I've been doing it for a few years. In fact, the Rallycross at Sports Car Club of America program started in Hastings about 18 years ago. And this fellow has 5 championships. I've been lucky to trophy, and he's driven 3 of them in my car.
Oh,
first the WRX, and then we got beat 3 years in a row by this fellow from Decatur, Georgia. And he was driving a 2006 Evo 9, sweet car.
Yep.
And then he put it up for sale. So I said, if you can't beat him, buy him. So now I own the car. I have a lot of fun. My friend can still win. I can still trophy. And it's just a sweet car because it's all about maneuverability at relatively low speeds. So the all-wheel drive is a lot of fun. You get some drifting in there. You get some action. So even though I've never done, say, like dirt track racing, I can appreciate how they're always looking for that grip, and they're always looking for how the car behaves instant to instant.
So going back to the last segment when we were talking about driver changes, et cetera, are there a lot of professional teams that are in this, or is it almost exclusively driver-owned vehicles?
This is some that are really good can get sponsors. There aren't purses or anything. There are trophies, and sponsors can make a little money. But actually, what they do is they lose less money, which is pretty much standard in racing, right?
Yes,
truly is.
But a lot will move on and take those skills to track and amateur racing. SCCA has an enormous program in amateur racetrack wheel-to-wheel racing. They have a big annual championship every year, and we have local races here at Raceway Park of the Midlands, in Iowa, and Motorsports Hastings, in Hastings. And so we're fortunate to sort of have both of those in our area. I've done time trials, which is not wheel to wheel, but that suits me because then I don't need to put the cage in and get all that gear. I can run with the street cars with a little extra safety precautions.
Well, and it keeps costs down too, right? We talk about it. We know the business of sports and motorsports is a passion most of the time, right? It's very hard to make money if you're a race team or a driver or whatever till you get to the big series. And even the tracks, I was saying, even the NASCAR tracks don't all do well, right? Tracks are very hard to run. So we appreciate our local community here.
Absolutely.
We need to support them. It's partly why we want to start the show, so that we can support the motorsports community, since that's my passion and certainly Mike's. And so we want to make sure everybody knows we're here. If anybody's listening, they can certainly call in on the Honda of Lincoln hotline, 402-464-5685, or the Starter Heyman text line if you'd like to ask Steve some questions or talk to any of us about racing. I think you want to talk about, you've talked about some of the upcoming events, but maybe talk about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks here, and then what does the future or the rest of the year look like?
So in 2 weeks, we have what we call the Spring Nationals. In fact, it was the first event in the country of this kind where we have the Pro Solo for 2 days, and then what's called the Solo Tour. Solo is autocross and sports car club speak. And there'll be about 350 drivers. Approximately 2/3 of those will drive in the first event, and all of them will drive in the second event. And our region being a host region, even though this event is operated by the national office, we run a test and tune track out there where they come and practice, do setup and adjustments.
Well, and you've got test and tunes with Solo number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 coming up throughout the year. I was going to ask you about those. So if you would wrap up on the upcoming events here that Rebecca just asked, and I want to lead that into these test and tunes. Those sound interesting.
Okay, so our local events. The Sunday event is going to be our points event. You accumulate points for the year. That's the competition event. But on Saturday, we have events where you can come and just practice your driving, work on the car setup, test tires. It's more or less free. You can run as many runs as you can, as long as everybody gets their chance. And it's great. We limit it to drivers that have a little more experience for safety reasons, because we don't have the tight timing of the regular points event on Sunday. So, but we'll have about 50 drivers out there, and on Sundays for our local events, we'll have about 100.
Yeah, that's a great turnout for Lincoln.
Well,
it really is.
We're also fortunate because people nearby, and even we
Yeah.
have people from California come out to our events because they get to practice on the championship course.
I was going to ask you, because you mentioned Decatur, Georgia, how many states do you get representation for coming here to Nebraska in general?
For the national events, all 50
All
plus
50 will.
other places not in the United
Yeah,
States. Yeah.
excellent. All right, very cool.
From a standpoint of a racer, what's it going to cost after that first one is free if you want to come out and race on a every event basis?
It's $40 for one day. Rallycross is $35.
Okay.
Because of our procedures for safety and very simple but easy to follow, the costs of insurance are very low. And then the national organization has some costs having to do with what we call sanctioned, about having to do with paperwork and so forth. And for us, it's we're a nonprofit. We just need to be able to pay for the site, so we have to rent the site and upkeep equipment and so forth. So it keeps it relatively inexpensive. The next biggest cost is tires. You do wear them out, and you buy these tires built for this sport. They're called autocross tires, and major companies are competing head over heels to give us these tires at low competitive prices and high performance. They're nominally 200 tread wear, but they're actually stickier than some race tires I ran on about 15 years ago. And so the big manufacturers there are BFG, Bridgestone, Yokohama, Falcon. There are others that make them, but those tend to be the ones that in recent years have been competing for our dollar.
What about Toyo? Do they jump in at all?
They do. They have. I don't think they have been as involved recently, but that can change.
Well, it was I actually at one time sold tires.
Oh, okay.
And Toyo was our performance line that we would carry. So that's why I was asking if maybe they were still involved in some streetcar racing.
I'm allowed to tell Steve that I was the global Mobil One brand manager for a decade. So I have my Mobil One shirt on. So hopefully you have Mobil One in your car. So
I do. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. You know, it is the choice of most racers, at least in the SCCA ranks for sure. We're very popular. So I just have to let you know. Between tires and oil, and what else have we done? We've called races at Eagle, and we've had a few cars between us. Last week we went through all the cars that we have. You know, so your current car, you said you had a local builder that helped you with that, or a local performance shop?
Yeah, it's a father and son team. This is a 16th Street rod they built, but the first one built for competition.
Okay.
They build the street rods that you see cruising around.
Oh, great.
And in fact, the father has this beautiful T-bucket, purple T-bucket. You've probably seen it around. But they built this for competition, and it's custom built. The engine, it's a crate engine, but they built the frame, they built the suspension. We're constantly improving it. It's actually a lot better now. It takes a lot of time with this, and I really enjoy driving it. So I went from one car with 130 horsepower to this thing with 500, and it's a huge
big
leap,
difference, huh?
But it's just part of the fun and variety. You see great cars out here. You'll certainly see some supercars, but you'll see, it turns out the Hondas from about the late 80s, it turns out that was a great platform. That's a really popular car for the low cost, highly tuned suspension categories. And they're amazing cars. They're so amazing that it's even hard to find one because this sport has bought them all up or beat them all up.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes you see these cars that are, Honda, just a modern Honda Civic. They've got an R and an SI that are really good, and those are family cars.
And I have a Mazda 3 6-speed that I bought specifically.
Yeah.
So I could come autocross. Yep, absolutely. I don't have to do a thing. I can literally take it out there. And so I think I'll see you out at Lincoln Air Park.
Okay, so I have to ask. I have a 2009 Mazda 6, and it's the more performance-oriented vehicle. It has the manual override for the transmission. If I would go out and partake in this, would I be better off leaving it in the automatic, or would I be better off moving it over to the manual?
You probably want to leave it into whatever keeps you in second gear, because of the speeds. Depends on the gearing. Generally, for instance, when I'm driving either the new race car, which actually got an automatic transmission, we just lock it in a second, and in Miata I'll be in second, and that's usually the case. Depends on the gearing though, so you're not doing a lot of shifting in this kind of sport. There are certain cars that will do more than others, but it's I was actually listening earlier talking about how in some races you may never shift, and that's just more stuff to keep track of. So I've been on the racetrack in time trials, and it is it is more work. It's taking more of your attention to handle that.
But you get into the purist debate, which I'd love to have, of, stick shift versus automatic. Because I grew up, I've been doing this for 25 years, and automatics on a race course were not popular then, right? We were all purists and all using manual transmissions, and then really good automatics were coming out. And so you'd have this debate, of whether or not you would take your automatic out there so you can focus on racing. And again, I'm sure there are purists out there, and I prefer a stick shift anyway, but not having to think about it definitely helps, especially autocross when you're first learning to downshift, get to red line shift, don't kill your, engine in the process, make the turn. It's super technical, and to me, that's something you have to think about. But lots of fun. And one of the questions I've always had, Steve, maybe you can answer it. Who designs those tracks? Who designs autocross tracks?
So members do. And here's something interesting. It's a different track every time.
Is it really?
So it's not like you go to the racetrack and, you memorize all the racetracks and you go out there. Everyone is seeing a fresh track. There's certainly a lot of similarity. And we develop local designers. We have some of our local designers are at national level. In fact, since we have this site, we tend to run courses that are very similar to the national level course because it's better practice for us. So there are design principles. A fellow named Roger Johnson out of Texas has a great book about that. He goes into the physics of the design, what speed can you get on a certain sweeper and all that, and allows you to make a technical design for the course that makes it interesting and competitive, and also highly exciting to drive.
And I think on that note, maybe we'll head to break. And Steve, anything else you want to tell us about the
I was just saying, how can people find out about your events coming up, your website, and
our
ways
website
to contact you?
Is NRSCCA for Nebraska Region Sports Car Club of America.com. Come on out there. You can get contact information for me. You can find our schedule. Our next event after the Nationals at Memorial Day Weekend will be June 4. That'll be a rallycross. And then near the end of June, I forget which date, we'll have our
24th and 25th of June.
There you go. You've got the calendar. We'll be out there. Folks are welcome to come out and watch. We don't charge. Free to watch, even at the national events. And what you'll find out is you and 3 other people are watching, and everybody else is out driving.
And so you're going to want to go jump in your car that you drove out there and say, hey,
$40, I'm in.
Borrow me a helmet. Let's go.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, Steve Ducharme, Regional Director of the Nebraska chapter of the Sports Car Club of America, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the finish line. It's been very educational, and I think both of us look forward to being out there and seeing what you guys do. And we may have to have you back in and promoting some of these bigger events, because it sounds like it's going to be fantastic.
Thanks for joining us, Gene.
Thank you.
Too many people believe that chronic pain, allergies, or illness are permanent and something you're stuck with. Novotny Nutrition is improving that narrative for 9 years and changing lives for the better, and the product is trained in the newest, most advanced pain-relieving techniques and ways to deal with toxins, allergies, pollution, and emotion that make you ill. Call today for a free consultation at 531-254-5695 or go to NovotnyNutritionandWellness.com. Novotny Nutrition and Wellness, located 7th and Superior.
They are our love bugs and companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are. But I feel like this isn't wrong. Now you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
My simple solution to the problem was remove people from the scene and help them feel safer.
In response to attacks against Asian Americans, Maddie Park raised over $250,000 to donate cab rides to the Asian community.
There is so much more work to be done. We really need to come together and tackle this issue as a community.
Support the Asian community. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Label, the Ad Council.
This is your captain. We are going to be experiencing some slight turbulence. Please send your... Oh, just got a video on that.
Imagine the pilot of an airplane was as confident as you are texting in. Seems crazy when you put it like that.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
I wanted to quit for so long, but I didn't know where to start.
I was afraid of what people would think, but then I found the right support to start my recovery journey. 1 in 14 Americans reports experiencing a substance use disorder, a treatable medical condition. Treatment can take many forms, so there are a variety of options to explore and find one that works best for you. Recovery from drug addiction is possible.
Paid for by the CDC, sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Old School with DP and J.
You could say that, I don't mess with Coach. I was asking, you want to play pro? 9 out of 100, say yeah.
There you go.
If you think that you're going to go to the NFL and you think the coach you play for is going to be hunky-dory with you, don't even play. Let alone if you think every is going to like you sadly mistaken.
93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Back to the finish line with Mike Melby on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the finish line. I'm Mike Melby. Rebecca Pearson right there. Big thank you to Steve Ducharme, the regional director of the Nebraska chapter of the SCCA. I learned a ton. I got to get a hold of my tire guy. I got to figure out how to adjust the camber on my car. I used to be able to do like front end alignments.
I'll let you run my car. It's okay. My car is literally ready to go. That's what the Mazda 3 6-speed is built for, right out of the showroom.
That's
so we're
awesome.
going to the track. Mike.
So some questions that I had that we ran out of time to ask, and thank you so much again to Steve for giving us that much time. Because I mean, it's Sunday night, and to come in and I felt like we could have done another segment, but we're up against it. But if you're wondering, the next events they have are May 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, and 29th. They're all out at Air Park. And if you want to bring a car out, bring a car out. You can rent a helmet if you don't have one. You do not need safety equipment. The events start roughly 8:30 or 9 o'clock every day, and they go on rain or shine. So if you got a convertible, take the top off, hope it rains. It'll be even more fun.
And you can do it yourself. You literally don't need to know anything. They will show it to you. It's harmless. It's very easy. You can go as slow as you want. First time out, I will never forget my first experience. It's, you are slow and cautious. And before you know it, the competitive juices kick in and you're like, how fast can I take this cone? And then you run over the cone. You're like, not that fast.
Yeah, you're slow and cautious until the adrenaline kicks in. Or the first corner that you don't think you went as fast
as you could have. Yes.
You're like, I didn't break loose.
Yeah.
So I think I might be good. Now, let me ask you this. From the autocross standpoint, have you ever driven a rear wheel drive car?
Oh, yes. Definitely.
How about do you prefer front wheel or rear wheel drive?
Front wheel is much better and easier, right? It is for autocross, but it's, when you're driving the high horsepower muscle cars, it's just fun.
Okay.
But,
Well, I was going to say, being a
front wheel's better.
Being a dirt track guy, I would actually be far more comfortable driving a rear wheel drive car. I know I would. because
because you know how it handles, right?
I know what's going to happen when the rear end breaks free.
Yep.
And I know how to correct it. I know how to steer through it.
Yep.
But that's why I was thinking about that. I'm like, man, front wheel drive. What if I start to spin out? What do I do? I don't know.
You steer away from the lamp post. Don't look at it, because when you're in a parking lot, there are lamp posts everywhere. So the thing you hit most often is either, the curbs that they put up to rope off the area, or it's a lamp post, literally. So don't look at it.
Okay.
It's
The
mistake.
nice thing is I'm pretty confident that there's no lamp posts.
Oh, really? Okay, great.
Yeah. It's just the
It's open.
west side of Air Park.
Okay.
and of the Lincoln Airport.
A
So
lot of autocrosses and parking lots, and they have lamp posts.
Yeah, no, there's no lamp posts out there. I'm pretty confident of that. I saw an air show out there.
Then just hang
with
on
the
if
Blue
you
Angels.
start sliding. Just hang
Okay.
on.
Yeah, because
Wait for it to stop.
I can pretty much promise you I would start sliding at some point. So
That's the fun of it, Mike.
exactly. Real quick, I know we're up against it with time. We probably got 60, 90 seconds left. Signal sticks, we'll probably talk about it next week because it's too good of a discussion to have. But Hudson O'Neal almost run down by Brandon Shepard until he makes a drastic lane change from the top to the bottom, gets away with it. It was all because of the signal stick guy. Kyle's mad, but come on.
You got to communicate somehow, right?
Well, and don't tell me they're not doing it, even if the guy with fluorescent everything on is not waving sticks.
Yeah.
You know they're looking at somebody that's telling them what to do.
Well, I want to talk about the jumbotrons. That's a whole nother one that goes
Well,
with
Kyle
that.
even admitted he wouldn't have won the Chili Bowl in 2020 if it would not, or 2021, or no, it was 2020 if it would not have been for the jumbotron
Yep.
at the end of the front straightaway. So
Modern racing.
Ricky Simmons and Get Your Happy On is up next here on 93.7 The Ticket. Always a fantastic show. Rebecca, thank you. Austin, thank you. Austin Harrison, thank you.
There it is.
We know who you are.
Exactly. We'll talk to you next week on The Finish Line here on 93.7 The Ticket.
This is Jay Foreman. When I played football for Nebraska and in the NFL, I wore